On the next Electro Lounge, Saturday at 9 on WJCT News 89.9, we're spinning music by Simply Red, Bliss, The Variety Lab, and the Electronic Jazz Appeal. Join us at 9 for the Electro Lounge, only on WJCT News 89.9.
The North Florida TPO is committed to shaping our transportation future. We're focused on planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, connected community. Learn more at northfloridatpo.com. Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Up next, national and local news from NPR and the WJCT News team.
Good morning, I'm Ann Schindler, and on today's First Coast Connect, it's the biggest stories of the week. Florida's Attorney General is found in contempt after defying a federal court order. It's bad karma for a local luxury car dealership under federal investigation. The future of the Rodman Dam is uncertain after state lawmakers allocate more than $6 million to tear it down. And finally, we have a budget. We'll look at what the state's financial plan means for the First Coast. Later, he's sometimes known as the Beach's Banksy, and you've most likely seen his work. Today, we'll tell you how you can track him down for a free art lesson. You can join our conversation. Give us a call at 904-549-2937. You can also email First Coast Connect at WJCT.org or tag us on social media. It's all ahead this hour after the day's news.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Windsor Johnston. President Trump continues to weigh whether the U.S. will enter the war between Israel and Iran. The White House says he'll make the decision within the next 2 weeks. NPR's Kat Lonsdorf reports the U.S. possesses a bomb that is thought to be capable of reaching even Iran's most well-protected nuclear facility.
The most fortified nuclear facility in Iran is called Fordow, located deep inside a mountain. And the U.S. has the only bomb that could damage it. Because of its size, that 30,000-pound bomb can only be carried by a B-2 stealth bomber, also something only the U.S. has. Most experts agree that the bomb could cause serious, possibly even debilitating damage to the facility, although it could take several hits. The real question is whether that would stop Iran's nuclear program or simply put it on hold, as Iran would still have the scientists and knowledge to start it back up again. Meanwhile, the International Atomic Energy Agency has warned such an attack could cause radioactive contamination. Kat Lonsdorf, NPR News, Washington.
A dangerous heat wave is building across the central U.S., with temperatures expected to reach the triple digits in parts of the plains today. Brian Jackson is a meteorologist with the National Weather Service. He says some areas could break records as the heat wave stretches into next week.
It'll really encompass the whole eastern United States. And with that, this is what we consider a heat dome, and it's going to become pretty stationary. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week, it's really going to be the same type of weather with increasing heat through that time.
Officials are urging people to stay hydrated and limit outdoor activities. Cooling centers are open in several cities. ICE immigration raids have continued at a number of Home Depots and some car washes in Los Angeles. Steve Futterman reports the Los Angeles Dodgers say agents who showed up at their stadium on Thursday were turned away.
In a social media post, the LA Dodgers say ICE agents came to the stadium and requested permission to access the parking lots. The Dodgers say they were denied entry. The team did not indicate why ICE might have wanted to enter the parking areas. DHS responded saying, quote, "This had nothing to do with the Dodgers." The agency's post says that Customs and Border Protection vehicles were in the parking lot briefly, quote, "unrelated to any operation or enforcement." The Dodgers have come under criticism by some fans for essentially saying nothing last week about the ICE operations and protests in L.A. For NPR News, I'm Steve Futterman in Los Angeles.
Stocks closed mixed across Asia today. On Wall Street, Dow futures are trading higher at this hour. This is NPR News in Washington.
You're listening to WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Good morning, I'm Stephen Ponson. It's now 9:04. The Downtown Investment Authority Board has approved a contract for longtime Baltimore development executive Jocelyn Tolbert to become the new DIA CEO in August. The contract approved is for 3 years, and Tolbert will receive $297,000 a year, according to news partners at the Jacksonville Daily Record. Tolbert will replace current CEO Lori Boyer once she retires at the end of June. The DIA's Director of Operations will serve as interim CEO until Tolbert begins his new role. The board's vote is the final action in selecting a new leader. The Jacksonville City Council recently rejected a proposal that would have given the council authority to hire and fire the DIA CEO. The Florida Board of Governors will allow the state's public universities to increase fees that out-of-state students pay starting this fall. Schools could increase the fee by up to 10% in August and by up to 15% in the fall of 2026. Chair of the Budget and Finance Committee, Alan Levine, says with this change, if universities increase out-of-state enrollment, they must increase in-state enrollment as well.
We do not want to see universities raising their non-resident enrollment rates to increase revenues, particularly at the expense of in-state students. We must make sure in-state students are not displaced because of this increase.
It's the first time in over a decade that these fees are being increased in the state. Showers mainly south of I-10 in northeast Florida this afternoon. Highs reach the mid-90s inland, upper 80s along the coast.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the George Lucas Educational Foundation, creator of Edutopia, dedicated to improving the learning experience for America's students by sharing what works in pre-K through 12 education at edutopia.org.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
Opinions expressed on the First Coast Connect Week in Review are those of our panelists and do not reflect the views of WJCT News 89.9.
Good morning. I'm Ann Schindler, and it's Friday, which means it's time for our First Coast Week in Review. Today, an extraordinary ruling finds Florida's Attorney General in contempt for flouting a federal court order. An exotic car dealership is under investigation, accused of ripping off customers of hundreds of thousands of dollars. St. Johns River advocates celebrate funding for tearing down the Rodman Dam. And more than 6 weeks after its scheduled end, a fractious legislature approves a state budget. To talk about all that and more, I am joined by Frank Powers, former assignment manager at News4Jax. Good morning, Frank.
Good morning. Glad to start the longest day of the year right here.
That's right. It is the longest day of the year. It's not going to be the longest morning. It'll fly by as it usually does. Anthony Austin, anchor at First Coast News. Good morning, Anthony.
Good to see you, Ann.
Good to see you as well. Obi Umunna, attorney and local political consultant. Welcome back, Obi.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here, all of you. Later in the program, we're going to introduce you to a local guerrilla artist whose goal is to make people smile. But first, it's been a busy week for Florida's Attorney General in the headlines. First, being found in contempt of defying a federal court order. So let's start there. James Uthmeyer, the new Attorney General, found by U.S. Judge Kathleen Williams to be in contempt. This is really an extraordinary step, Obi, not just for a public official as high profile as James Uthmeyer, but also Florida's top law enforcement officer.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, this is not something you see a lot, right? I think just to give it a little bit of background, obviously Florida passed some different types of immigration laws that have been challenged in the federal courts. And while they're being challenged, the judge issued what's an injunction, which means basically wait until we have a decision before you continue to enforce it. The current AG is basically wrote an email to law enforcement officers, basically telling them not to follow this injunction and to continue making arrests. And the judge didn't like that. Yeah, the judge said that, those kinds of messages, which she basically was describing as sort of disregard for her, order or the rule of law, could lead to anarchy. That was kind of her first indication that she might be cracking down. Now, this is not a criminal
contempt charge. So we think of contempt, maybe he could go to jail. That's not the case, right?
That's not the case here. What the judge did do was say, hey, I need you to report back to me. I need you to, at least if you don't agree with it, but enforce the injunction while we're in that injunction period. And I think this is an interesting point because I think what we're seeing with rule of law is that you can't just pick and choose which rule of law that you want to follow, right? This is an injunction. Ultimately, the decision may come down in their favor, but until that happens, I think you need to kind of follow the rules and follow what the judge is saying.
I mean, not just think, right? That is the law.
That is the law.
There are ways of challenging a judge's order. The judge in this case, Judge Williams, saying, quote, litigants cannot change the plain meaning of words as it suits them, especially when conveying a court's clear and unambiguous order. She said there needs to be an appreciation and abiding by court order, or else all this becomes anarchy. Anthony, I want to ask you, I mean, before becoming Attorney General, a seat that he was appointed to after Ashley Moody was appointed to fill Marco Rubio's Senate seat. I mean, there's kind of all of these dominoes moving, but he took over. He was Ron DeSantis as the governor's chief of staff. Does it seem like the shift from a political appointment to, what it will be ultimately an elected position and the top law enforcement officer of this state is perhaps a shift in kind, a shift in character and expectations of him, that perhaps he's following a different script?
Exactly. I found it interesting when that move did take place and he went from that position to becoming the state's law enforcer, basically, and just kind of wondering how he would be able to handle that role and his understanding of that position. And basically, he's posted on social media about all of this, that if he's going to be held in contempt, oh well, he was like, I want to continue to follow Trump's stance when it comes to the country's immigration laws. And he seems to be okay with it, to continue to defy the judge's order if he has to, in order to continue following the Trump administration's immigration stance on this situation. And I know the judge is now requiring him to do biweekly updates to talk about whether there's been any arrests made or any actions that have been taken under the past law. But it is interesting with him now in this position and his understanding and what he will continue to do as Attorney General.
Yeah, so he has said, I mean, right after this ruling was issued, Frank, he said on Tuesday, basically, if being held in contempt is what it costs to defend the rule of law and stand firmly behind President Trump's agenda on illegal immigration, so be it. I want to listen to something that he said. I think this was on Fox News about this issue, but it just also reinforces his position that he is following the law. Let's take a listen.
The federal government, the Trump administration, they've delegated authority to all of our state law enforcement officers to go out and use federal authorities to detain and deport, and we're going to continue to do that. Florida's leading the way. We've got thousands of arrests underway, and we're going to enforce the law.
So he is basically saying, and he did say, I'm not going to renege on my oath to uphold and defend our state constitution. He's saying this is the law of the land. Here in Florida, the state legislature and the governor agreed on this new law that basically makes it a crime, additional crime for someone who's not properly documented to be in the state and subject to arrest.
Oh, he's wearing this contempt citation as a red badge of MAGA. He's basically following the Trump playbook to defy and disrespect court rulings that he doesn't like. He's basically campaigning already for either run for Attorney General or something else. The guy loves where he is right now. He wanted this. He wants the attention. The million-dollar question is, what do judges do, and this is happening all over the country, what do judges do when their orders are ignored? Basically, the judge here has given Uthmeier homework, and he's just like, fine, whatever. And as far as the immigration enforcement by local police in Florida, it is not happening. All you have to do is go to that ICE website that we talked about a couple weeks ago. They're not happening. The last time that I updated for May, now they did have that was a targeted Operation Tidal Wave in South Florida when they picked up 1,100 people. But the day-to-day 287G contacts that local law enforcement are supposed to report, check it out. It's online. You know how many there were in May in Florida? 0. You know how many there were in April in Florida? 0. 1 in March. police agencies in Florida, it's not on their radar. It's not what they do. It's not what they're trained to do.
It's interesting because the attorney for Uthmeier told the judge, kind of despite all this back and forth, what he's been telling local law enforcement in terms of, he can't force them to follow this order. Uthmeier's attorney told the judge there haven't been, to Frank's point, any arrests on this since April. But this is a debate that has also been active at the local level. Can you remind us kind of why the Jacksonville City Council has also passed a similar law, similar to the state, and is also querying kind of what the enforcement ought to be?
Right. I mean, I think this is very interesting because Jacksonville passed a similar law to the state law, right? And even to just delve into the a little bit deeper is that the actual challenge of this law is that it's the federal government's job to deal with immigration, not state and now local. And our actual city government put out a warning and said, hey, we should really follow this injunction. And I think there was some pushback from some of the Republican council people that had passed the local law saying this is unfair. But now look at what has happened, and now someone's being held in contempt for this. I think you have to say that our city government was correct in of what they said. And
our
I think,
city attorney.
Yeah, our city attorney was 100% correct and did the right thing to advise our sheriff's office to just wait, not just to wait until this injunction is passed. And so you're seeing this consistently where, this particular litigation is about really not overstepping the federal law in a sense and not doing something different from the federal law because they're the ones that are been constitutionally assigned to handle immigration.
In a podcast, the AG said in early June that if the judge wants to, quote, lock me up in jail, I'm willing to take that. In this case, the judge hasn't considered a criminal contempt penalty, just these fines and the homework that Frank alluded to. But I mean, is there a point at which legally she could begin considering criminal penalties?
I mean, if you know any judges, they don't like their orders to be disobeyed, right? And I think
they really don't.
They really don't like it. And I think what this judge has done is given him a chance to kind of just follow this, and we'll see where this judge decides to go at this point. But I think at this point, I think what the judge has given him is an easy assignment to fulfill, right? But we'll see how much, and the fact that there are no arrests and those type of things are also going to be good. But we'll see how much this AG wants to kind of play with the judge. You don't want to play with the judge, and we'll see. But if you push a judge, they will definitely come back with stronger penalties.
And now he went on Fox News the other night to advocate for a new federal detention facility in the Everglades.
Yeah, tell us about this.
Yeah, he says it would be
Alcatraz.
the alligator Alcatraz. It would be in Miami-Dade County, surrounded by swamp and gators. I don't know if that's going to actually happen, but he is advocating for it, and he did so on national news.
So this is a facility that he says would basically have 1,000 beds, be patrolled by the Florida National Guard, and would basically be a 3-in-1 detention center. It would allow for detaining, processing legal cases, and then deporting because there's this airstrip there. Now, it's not clear if this is just an idea or if it's moving towards reality, Anthony, but he said that they could get this set up within 30 to 60 days, that this could be something that they're able to effect quickly.
Right. I thought it was interesting when we talked about this the other day, and I was just kind of looking at the map of where this facility would be located and basically making our own Alcatraz and having this surrounded by gators and swamp and whatever it may be.
And
I'm
your
just kind of,
favorite snakes.
Oh, yeah, my favorite snakes, exactly. I'm just kind of wondering about the need and why we would need something like this, and is it really worth the price of putting into place?
Yeah. If you're just joining us, I'm talking to Frank Powers, Obi Umunna, and Anthony Austin about the week's headlines, and you're welcome to join our conversation. You can give us a call at 904-549-2937. You can also email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org or reach out on social media. Frank, I want to ask you, because there's also just another headline that has attached to the Attorney General this week, and I figure we should get to all three, which is these comments that he had about Representative Ilhan Omar, who's a Minnesota Democrat. She had posted a video critical of the U.S. government, saying that we're turning into one of the worst countries. And he basically retweeted a post of that clip that just said denaturalize and deport. So I guess, again, I just kind of return to the question of, as the top law enforcement officer in the state, whether he's maybe skirting the line of kind of what that role is or is intended to be, or if it has just become such a political role that calling for the deportation of an elected official.
I will go with B. It's a political appointment. He is reading the national headlines in terms of immigration. He wants to stay in the limelight, whether or not it be as Attorney General elected or for something else. But he's doing exactly what he wants to do for political reasons. There's no doubt about it.
I think I said this on a show before, that one of the reasons that people come to this country is to be able to have free speech and sometimes be critical of the government. We should not be offering to denaturalize people just because they're critical of our government. What makes us a great country is being able to be critical, and that enhances our government. And I think when you're doing this, is clearly he's running for office. He's hitting all his MAGA talk points in order to run for office, but you should be able to be critical of our government. That is what makes our country great. That is why people come to this country, not to be in a country where you can be arrested or deported for speaking against our government.
Sure.
Unfortunately, we've got to a point where people will say, yeah, I'm all for free speech. Mine, that is, not yours.
Yeah, I mean, right. So not just should, but it actually is a constitutionally protected right that we have to criticize our government and to hold them to account. We've got a call from Janet in the Beaches. Good morning, Janet. Go ahead.
Hey, good morning. Well, I do little deep dives on things when Trump gives money to these detention centers. There's one in Newark, New Jersey. I looked that one up. These are all owned by Trump supporters. These are privately owned places, and he's giving millions of dollars to them. Follow the money. That's what's going on here. He wants to build plenty of places so he can give his friends money, and that's what it's all about. Follow the money.
Thanks, Janet. We also have a call from Devin in St. John's. Good morning, Devin. Go ahead.
Hello. The question I had was twofold. One, or actually, no, just one. The words I had were, so why are people targeting just immigrants and not the businesses who hire the migrants, who use them for cheap and abusable labor?
Thanks, Devin. Anyone want to take that?
Well, we kind of got into that with the whipsawing by DHS after lobbyists for farms and the hotel industry and other parts of the economy, which are heavily reliant on migrant work, said, hey, these aren't criminals you're taking off the streets. These are longtime employees and taxpayers, and you're taking them out of my workforce. I can't replace them. And then Trump said, we're going to back off on that. And then 24 hours later, DHS said, no, we're not.
Yeah.
I've been curious. The policy is like trying to pin down Jell-O.
I've been curious, at what point or if we will hear much from the home builders lobby here in Florida, which is a very powerful interest group, Anthony, and relies heavily on immigrant labor, not necessarily undocumented immigrant labor, but in some cases those two do overlap. And they've been remarkably quiet on, kind of open lobbying for changing these enforcement rules.
They have, because I've had that same question as well, if we're going to hear more from them, because they rely on so much of their work when it comes to different things to get done, with construction from our immigrant population. And I'm surprised that they've kind of been quiet about this, but I am wondering how it affects their bottom line. I can tell you, recently, we actually heard from a business owner who was expecting some immigrant labor. No one showed up one day.
Oh, wow.
And he was left without any employees and I'm kind of keeping it because this is, a little quiet right now. I'm not going to say which business it was, but he was kind of surprised when no one showed up, and he was like, I can't get things done today because I don't have the workers that I rely on.
Obi, the question of whether to pull back on certain industries, whether it's farm workers or the hospitality industry, there's been discussion about trying to help those businesses, but people in the immigrant advocacy community have noted, even if the workers are protected, very often they have family members at home, or spouses or somebody else that could be vulnerable, that would make kind of their life situation untenable, even if they're able to kind of evade enforcement on the job.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. This immigrant policy in this country for a very long time has not been perfect. It has not been where it needs to be, and I think you can see that. But what has happened, instead of there needs a lot of nuance in order to fix this issue, because there are a lot of different people that are affected, businesses, families, and what has happened with the Trump and DeSantis administration is they've really put a sledgehammer to this instead of a scalpel. Right? There are some illegal immigrants that should be deported, and that has been the law on the books for years. But what we've seen is a lot of these people just want to bring money home to their families and kind of take care of their people and really just, work hard. And you're seeing some business owners start to stand up for these people because they've worked for them for 10, 20 years and had no problems. And so we will hopefully start to see more of a pushback from the business community here, because I think they're starting to see that some of this stuff is unnecessary, and really these people are not the people that are the problem.
We've got a call from Stephen at the Beaches. Good morning, Stephen. Go ahead.
Hey, good morning. I just wanted to point out in your discussion about the proposed detention facility in South Florida surrounded by alligators, that when Donna Deegan mentioned the word concentration camp, she was early on the immigration, early in her administration, and in relation to immigration, she was just roundly jumped on. Oh my God, what are you talking about? That couldn't happen here. And now we're talking about a concentration camp surrounded by alligators where all of these immigrants will be taken. I just find it incredibly ironic.
Stephen, thanks for your comment. We're talking about the week's headlines, and you're welcome to join our conversation. Give us a call, email us, or reach out on social media. I want to move on now to a topic that has been in the headlines for a number of weeks now, Anthony, about the airport. Obviously, this fire that took out a lot of the hourly garage, impacted a lot of people. The airport now saying $38 million, just a starting point on this rebuild.
Just a starting point. It could possibly be more, because we all remember it's been, I believe, a month now since the fire happened?
May 16th, yeah.
Oh,
a little
actually,
over a month.
a little over a month, yeah. Since that fire happened at the airport garage. And I know we've all seen the images of those flames after that one BMW that was in the garage caught fire and then spread to 50 cars there. And so now we're seeing the impact of that damage. I've had to deal with emails from people for the past month who have not been able to get their cars from the parking garage, and they were kind of left out on exactly what was going on. They didn't have any information. So I know
it's right up Ask Anthony's alley.
Exactly. So they've been very frustrated with that. I've been trying to deal with that, talking to the Jacksonville Aviation Authority and valet services about everything that's going on. But now that we're kind of getting a price tag about everything, according to the Aviation Authority, they haven't fully assessed everything yet, because it's still not yet safe for some engineers to get in and inspect the most damaged areas of the airport. I know that the Aviation Authority actually sent me some pictures showing the different support beams that they were putting in there between the floors right now, just to be able to get in there and do work and get some of the cars out that are still in there.
They partially collapsed.
Yeah, they partially collapsed. Yeah, I think it was between the third and second floor where that partial collapse happened. And the third and fourth floors of the South Side garage, they were hit hardest, and as you mentioned, with even part of it collapsing. So that fire knocked out more than 500 public parking spots and 90 rental car spaces. So in total, there were about 1,200 cars inside when that fire broke out. So this caused more than $3 million in lost revenue just for the airport when all of this happened.
I mean, they were already down a bunch of parking spaces because they'd cleared out this whole footprint to build a new parking garage to satisfy the parking needs.
Which wasn't going to have sprinklers like the first one.
Is that right?
The first one didn't have sprinklers. Didn't even have those hoses that you see, where it's connected to a wall. You open a little window there, pull out the hose and turn it on there. Those weren't even in there. You think that the airport authority needs to rethink sprinklers? Let's face it, EVs are here to stay. We don't know yet if that Beamer was an EV. It could have been. By the way, that's one of the few cars still there, because there's going to be litigation over all this lost revenue. Who rented the car? I'm assuming it was a rental. Who manufactured it? Who manufactured the battery? If it's a lithium battery, there's all types of litigation coming. So it's no surprise that whoever left that Beamer there has not come back to claim it.
I mean, a reporter from your old station too spoke to a woman impacted by this. Now she's, kind of still at the point that they interviewed her. I think maybe she's gotten her car back now, but it was damaged, and so she's been having to use a rental car. She's already spent $1,700 out of her own pocket. I mean, that's the kind of expense that most people just simply can't afford.
She hopes to be reimbursed, but that, it's going to be a long time before that happens, and it's probably not going to be 100%.
Yeah. We've got a call from Brian in Arlington. Good morning, Brian. Go ahead.
Hey, good morning. I had a question about the possible lost revenue for the city. It's my understanding that the parking garage brings in a decent amount of money for the city, or maybe it's just JEA, but I believe I saw it on a property tax bill at some point, or some kind of pie chart that it does bring in revenue. And, does the insurance cover that, like for lost revenue for the city, or is the insurance only for the loss of the structure?
That's a good question, Brian. I mean, I know that some of the money that the airport has received, this kind of advance that they got from their insurer, includes losses for parking fees and car rental fees from the car rental agencies that use that lease that area. But just still, I mean, they've only gotten just a fraction. They've gotten $5 million, and expecting a much bigger chunk of losses from this.
And they're losing thousands of dollars a day, and will be for at least a year and a half.
Yeah, and the city we should say, the city council has to kind of approve this additional $38 million that the airport wants to spend on this rebuild, because that's something that has to go through city council, whether or not our city coffers are impacted.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, hopefully we'll see where the insurance kind of claims end up here. You would hope that you would be insured for this kind of loss, and hopefully that will cover a majority of the share of this at some point. Obviously, the city will have to cough up some money at some point, and a little bit maybe in advance to kind of, as long as we're waiting for these litigation processes to go through, which could take some time, unfortunately. But we'll see. I think, I flew out of the airport last week, and we took an Uber there because we didn't want to deal with whatever was happening. We weren't sure, and I think a lot of people are going to be doing the same, and we'll see how that works.
I mean, I will say I took an Uber there recently, and there was parking available at all of the lots except for the hourly one, which was closed. But I did find the Uber back was a difficult process. There was a huge line of people because everybody's doing ride shares at this point at the pickup point. And so there was a real bottleneck there summoning an Uber. If anybody from the airport is listening.
Fly on Tuesday.
Fly on Tuesday. That's right. Tuesdays, Wednesdays. I want to move on to another topic related to cars. This having to do with a luxury car dealership on Beach Boulevard called Bull Auto. It's actually one of two locations. There's one in New York and one here. But this is a really high-end car dealer, Anthony, and now the owner is under federal investigation. Tell us what's going on.
That's right. First, let me say I'm sure there are some great car dealerships out there, but I get emails. I just did a story last night about someone who was affected by a local car dealership that's no longer in business and has an F rating with the Better Business Bureau. Oof. But moving on to talk about this one, I call this a high-end scam with some luxury nightmares, because you are talking about some high-end deals that basically just went extremely wrong. So as you mentioned, this is a multi-state investigation going on with Bull Autos. They were also under the Karma brand as well, but now Karma has separated because of everything that's going on. And I believe this all started with a situation. This owner has a business in Albany, New York, and things were going wrong up there. And then they found out about what was happening here. And we actually had some of the people involved contact our newsroom about all of this. So I'll just kind of give you an example. One customer said he paid $260,000 for a high-end car only to find out someone else had bought the same car from this owner. So they were basically selling it twice. And then another person in New York, he claims he's out of $250,000 for a Lamborghini he never even received because it was also sold to someone else. So now my understanding, I believe the owner of this luxury car dealership, he's MIA. He's missing in action during all of this while this is going on.
And we're talking, I mean, this really is the peak, you know, car ownership level, Rolls Royces, Lamborghinis, Porsches, you know, some high end stuff, Frank, but just, you know, doesn't make anybody happier about losing a giant chunk of money, regardless of kind of what, you know, you can afford when it comes to a vehicle.
Well, the place is closed now, but before it became empty, there was a lot of crawling and hauling going on there.
Yeah.
You had federal investigators, karma investigators, state of Florida investigators, insurance investigators, banking investigators, all crawling all over the place on Beach Boulevard.
Trying to find cars.
And tow trucks were hauling the ones off that they could. I don't know what happened that led to this. One thing is clear, though. The owner, I think his name is Vladimir Rangelov, was in dire financial straits.
Oh, do we know that?
Well, he was, from what I understand, he was a very trusted dealership.
Yeah.
So something happened. What happened? Why is he under investigation now for this double dealing that Anthony just mentioned? He's double selling cars, and nobody's getting the car, but he's getting the money. So he needed money. Why?
One of the customers indicated that they had sold a vehicle through the dealership, and the dealer had not paid off the loan, leaving this gentleman with like a $250,000 debt, you know, that he still owed. But there was also someone there, Obi, that described a representative from Karma searching the lot to try to find these vehicles, looking for 10 Karma vehicles and only finding 5. So a lot still to be accounted for.
Yeah, I mean, this is what the AG should be focusing on here, right? Like, these are the type of crimes that are suited for the AG to make sure and actually provide not just after the fact, but proactive, you know, consumer protection, right? I think that is one of their biggest jobs. And so hopefully that this can get, you know, these never end well, right? The money is probably more likely gone, and who knows where the cars are, right? But, you know, I think if we need the AG focusing on stuff like this.
I want to move on now and talk about budget. Finally, on the 105th day of what was supposed to be a 60-day legislative session, we have a $115 billion state budget approved Monday, very late. And I'm going to say, Obi, a lot of the debate was about, you know, property taxes. That didn't kind of make the final cut. But the way that this passed and kind of the hour that it passed, it eluded scrutiny in the way that some, you know, kind of if it had happened during the regular legislative session, that it would have received. What are the implications of that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the state government is going to work on property tax reduction, but they weren't able to get it done this time. This has been one of the kind of the weirdest sessions in a long time for it to go this long and to not have a budget. There were some tax help for people, but nothing really in the sense that helps the everyday person. If you're a small business, you're going to get a 2% tax reduction on the lease, but there are some other smaller things, like, you know, they made the back to school tax savings permanent. They've made like batteries and generators as well, but nothing that really changes an everyday person's life. If you have a business or a small business, so that 2% will be extremely helpful, because, you know, a lot of businesses don't have high margins, and so that 2% will be helpful in some sense. But other than that, I don't think you're seeing a huge kind of tax gain, and I think that is unfortunate after 105 days of kind of going back and forth.
Yeah. And so the governor has until basically, you know, July 1 to manage this, whether he's going to veto portions, but it takes effect July 1. And so that's the timeline that we're on. And Frank, what are you expecting to see there?
Vetoes with gusto. Florida Tax Watch has already weighed in, as they always do right after the budget is finalized. It's saying, here's our list of turkeys, and I think it's like over $400 billion. And, of course, a lot of those get thrown in quietly during the session to prod lawmakers to go along. They're what other people call pork. Florida Tax Watch calls turkeys. Now, you mentioned that there was nothing about any reform for property taxes or sales taxes. Both of those, the governor had said, needs to be done. It didn't happen. There was a lot of screaming and yelling among Republican members of the legislature over that. The days where Ron DeSantis calls the shots and the legislature follows along are gone.
Mhm.
That's why we will see a lot of vetoes, and he will send probably terse veto messages when he makes them.
And I just want to say, I think you maybe meant million, not billion, on the Florida Tax Watch turkey list.
416 million, I think.
Million, yeah.
Yep.
Some of those are from, Jacksonville projects, including the Orlec, Mosh, the Hicks Honors College at UNF, the Duval History Center. But we should say, the turkeys, Anthony, aren't necessarily things that Florida Tax Watch thinks are bad projects, just that didn't go through the proper channels, maybe were added at the end, or perhaps don't represent like a statewide compelling interest for everybody. But those turkeys, I guess, could be on the veto list, and I think others think that there's going to be some retribution in terms of that very contentious legislative session. The people that were opposing this governor might face those on a veto pen.
Right. I know that there's a lot of people probably concerned about that, about if there will be any retribution when it comes to these different projects. I know a lot of people are passionate, especially in our community, about these local projects that they needed funding for, and they were hoping for funding to come through. And when you see this happen, there's concern. Are we going to receive this money? What's going to happen? And will our projects actually be able to actually thrive and see its way through to completion without this money?
Just one of two no votes in the House was our Jacksonville legislator, Angie Nixon, and I'd reached out to her to just ask her about her no vote, and she said, basically, when you do a deep dive into the budget, you see a ton of corporate giveaways, you see a ton of things that don't go far enough for working class families, and she said basically these folks in Tallahassee are basically passing laws that are profitable to their friends and not taking care of ordinary folks. But this is, a budget that is going to have impacts.
Doge component to it, too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so talk about that.
There is part of the budget allows the state government to review local expenditures and whether or not they will go on it. That basically veto impact for the state over local programs if they don't feel at Tallahassee that those are in agreement with ideologies coming out of the governor's office. And Democrats howled about that.
One thing that passed in this legislative session, it had kind of been taken out of the budget, but was slipped back in at the last minute, is a controversial charter school provision that will allow charter schools to operate rent-free out of under-enrolled public schools. This is kind of ongoing, battle between traditional public education and school choice, which is a big movement in Florida. But this also allows charter applicants, to circumvent school boards and take their charter applications to a local college or university, state college or university, most of which we know are currently run by former GOP lawmakers or appointees of this governor.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you saw with, if there were any winners of the last session, it was definitely charter schools and what they were able to get accomplished. And we're going to start to see the effects of that in Florida immediately. What has happened in the past is, the city council, or not the city council, the school board, as the experts on school, were kind of a bridge between charter schools and the community, and now they're using to kind of go around the school board and really give authority to more authority to parents and to just outside entities that don't have to worry about elected officials and that kind of stuff. So we'll start to see that this coming year, what is going to happen to our public school. There was a lot of money that went into charter schools and not as much money that went into, public schools and programs for AP and all of those things. Those programs were cut. They weren't completely taken out, which was initially what they wanted, but those programs were cut. And I do agree with Rep. Nixon. Those are the ways that you help working class people, and that you didn't see that in this budget.
I do just want to briefly touch on an item that was in the budget, and this is a decades-old fight, but funded for the very first time in this budget. Would tear down the Rodman Dam in Putnam County and restore the Ocklawaha River. Frank, I know that you know that this has been this ongoing debate.
Oh, it's been going on decades.
And environmentalists celebrating this allocation, but also some concern that DeSantis, the governor, is going to veto.
I don't see it surviving. It didn't. There was the last budget. There was $500,000 in it to do an assessment of tearing down the Rodman and restoring the Ocklawaha River. The people who represent the Florida Springs say you'll immediately restore 20 springs, but what's happened, that is the reservoir at the Rodman Dam has become a world-renowned fishing place, and that puts a lot of money into the local economy. Bassmaster has even gone on record as sending a message to the governor's office to veto that $500,000 and the $6 million to tear it down.
And so the future of the dam hanging in the balance, Anthony, but we've got a couple weeks that we've got to watch this budget for vetoes.
Exactly. I know State Senator Tom Leake, he represents the area, and he came out strongly against the proposed funding. He says, this is not just a water issue, it's part of the culture and identity of communities like Putnam County. So the Putnam County Commission, they even sent a letter to lawmakers warning that any changes could help the region's economy and also the future.
Yeah,
of
and we
that
should say we
area.
reached out to Senator Leake to see if he could come on the program and talk about this. We haven't yet heard back, but something that we'll keep an eye on. Frank Powers, Anthony Austin, Obi Umunna, thanks so much for being here. Happy Friday, y'all.
Happy
Thanks
Friday.
for having us.
Friday to you.
All right, up next, talking to a gentleman who's sometimes known as the Beach's Banksy. Welcome back. Well, he's sometimes known as the Beach's Banksy, and if you've driven around Jacksonville or visited the airport recently, you've most likely seen his work. Today, we'll tell you how you can track him down for a free art lesson. Scotie Cousin, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
I want to,
It's-
well, I appreciate you being here. I want to start, if I can, a little bit with your background. You came to this artwork at sort of a dark time in our nation, in our world's, mindset, right at the start of COVID. Can you tell us a little bit about creating this artwork?
Oh, it was really a magical moment. I was at a Queens Harbor Publix in at the throes of COVID, and everybody's buying everything in line, and there were long lines, and everybody was being so awful to each other. And I was looking around, and I just said, "What am I going to do? This is just killing me." As an artist and a creative, I was driving on my way home, and I had some political signs in my studio, and I didn't know what I was going to do with them. But on that way home, I had an epiphany. I looked at a tree on my way home in the Esplanade, and I'm saying, I'm going to make a critter, and it's going to be smiling. And I didn't know what it was going to be, but I got so excited. By the time I got off the flyover over to my house, I was already in my garage fashioning one very crudely, if I might say, and not nearly as fine as today. But I did, and I got it, put a bright orange shirt on and a white hard hat, and I got a ladder, and I put that thing out there that day, right after I got home from Publix.
And then you watched some people's reactions.
Yes, I took a chair out there, and I watched people for 2 hours. And then I was smiling from ear to ear. I was like, "This is awesome! I'm gonna."
Because they
I
were too. I mean, you saw reactions.
Oh, I saw reactions like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah.
It really didn't look that good. To me, what I do, and I was only that big, and the eyes are tremendous right now because they want to see what you need for the day to get through it to make you happy.
This
So
was something, though. It's kind of like the surprise of the location, the whimsy of the
yes,
artwork.
yes. Oh, it's all about surprises. What do we like? Christmas, birthdays, all these when we know we're gonna get something. It's always about this. You don't ever know when you're gonna see it, what it's gonna be, how it's gonna be segued into the environment. But the thing about it is, it's an animal. it almost looks like it belongs there, but it still looks so different. And then when it's in the middle of nowhere, it has that impact fact of where it just jostles people out of their bad mood. And I was just telling Jocelyn that I use Jocelyn, but yeah, I was just telling her that it really is about the find of it,
Well,
and
we're looking, if people are watching our live stream, they can see a couple of your images. We're going to take a short break. We're going to be back in just a minute with Scotie Cousin and Jocelyn Tolbert of the Cathedral Arts Project. We'll be back in 2 minutes.
Terrell Hogan Law.
I'm Wayne Hogan. Highway, hospital, home, work. Where injuries happen can make a difference in the law and the outcome.
More at terrellhoganlaw.com. Volunteers in Medicine Jacksonville is dedicated to helping the working uninsured stay on top of their health. High blood pressure is a silent killer. A healthy reading is under 120/80. Learn more at vimjax.org.
On the next Fresh Air, we remember Edmund White, one of the most eloquent and perceptive chroniclers of gay life and culture, beginning in the 1960s. He wrote over 30 books of fiction, nonfiction, and essays. The first of his trilogy of semi-autobiographical novels, A Boy's Own Story, was an international bestseller. Join us
Today at 1 on WJCT News 89.9.
On the next Florida Roundup, hot and cold states. Not red or blue states, but our state of mind in this hyper-politicized world. Thousands of protesters took part in marches across Florida against President Trump and his policies last weekend. Last year, millions of Floridians voted for him. So do you lose your cool or keep your emotions in check with immigration, education, politics in general? Email us radio@thefloridaroundup.org. I'm Tom Hudson. Then join us Friday noon until 1.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, I am talking to artist Scotie Cousin. We're also joined by Jocelyn Tolbert. She's the Director of Communications and Marketing at Cathedral Arts Project, which is partnering with Scotie for an upcoming free art lesson for kids. And I want to get to that project, Jocelyn, but Scotie, we were talking about how this grew out of COVID, your response and trying to bring some joy to the community, and it has really proliferated since then. But it is also, art has also been a way for you to personally overcome some difficult times in your own life. You've lived with chronic pain. You've had to overcome some real struggles with dependency because of the pain medications you were given. Can you kind of talk about how art has worked for you and helped you in that way?
oh my gosh, it has totally saved me because I feel no pain when I'm creating. I've had over 40 major surgeries from 1978 on. And it has been it's been a life of pain, but the pain is what has taught me a lot of this stuff and the giving. It really has opened my eyes to what really matters and not complaining either, knowing blessings, even though I am that I am in chronic pain. The blessing is that I can share this creative side of myself and then make other people smile, and that I feel no pain. It's like the best pain reliever in the world. And I continue to do it, and it never, ever gets old. And it's just really wonderful to do.
And so I mentioned that there is this upcoming workshop where you're going to be offering kids an opportunity to learn, also, see and work with some of the whimsical characters, the critters that you make. And Jocelyn, this is something that Cathedral Arts Project is facilitating. Why is it that you all wanted to partner with Scotie in particular?
Well,
We all know Scotty's art. Everybody's seen it around town. And at CAP, we are a nonprofit arts education provider, and we work with a lot of kids around town in different education settings. And Scotty is somebody that is doing wonderful things. He's also volunteering with kids and doing things with groups. So it just makes a natural partnership for us. And, some of our families we're going to bring in, we're hoping to do. Art brings so much to kids, art education, and so when Scotty will be doing this workshop, it's important. A lot of things that our kids will be learning. For instance, teamwork, collaboration, bringing out some art inside of themselves that they didn't know they had. And that's really important.
And this is actually being held at the Beaches Museum, which is, Scotty's stomping grounds out there at the beaches. This is June 21st. And so it's basically a couple of groups. Kids 6 to 8 can do it, 9 to 10 years old as well. But do they need to sign up? Do they need to register even though it's free?
Yeah, there's a few spots left within Scotty's, one of his workshops. There's just a couple left. You can go to our website and sign up, but we'll also have an exhibit that day as well. So if you don't get a spot in the workshop, you'll still be able to come see some of Scotty's art, do some other type of art activities that we're going to have. It's going to be a great day, so everybody's welcome to come out to the Beaches Museum and see it.
And when you started, you mentioned that you had some election signs in your garage when you initiated this. And in fact, you've continued to use the back of these signs and recycle them as kind of a key part of the work that you do.
It is the key part. Every mayor has been over besides Mayor Deacon. I don't think she's come over, but they've given me all their signs. And I actually show them what I make out of them. It's pretty cool when I show them what I've made out of the signs they gave me if they're political signs.
So they're durable, but you're
Oh,
also
yeah.
making use of something that would probably otherwise end up in a landfill.
Yes, and it's so easy for people to install because it's corrugated. There's just 2 wires you put in a tree or trim, and it just goes right up. It's real easy.
And so at this workshop that you're doing, you're going to present one of the critters that we showed a minute ago that you brought here with us is kind of a black and white version. So kids are going to be able to sort of color those.
Yes, these things are 4 foot by 4 foot, and they're gigantic critters, and they're kind of have a design in them like a coloring book. So the kids are going to stay in one quadrant. We're going to say, hey, you stay right here, do anything in that quadrant you want to do. And by the time it is done, when everything is done, they're going to look back and go, wow, this is really great. I'll go home and clean them up a week and then bring them back, hang them, and they'll be hanging on a wall somewhere, either to do for a nonprofit, for any type of, they'll auction them off. One's going to Mayor Hoffman, I think.
At the beaches,
Yeah, and it's going to just be wonderful because I think we're going to have 8 large pieces that these kids are going to do. One going to Caps, and whoever else wants them,
Well, we love the work that you do. It's really fun that you share it with all of us. And, for people, keep your eyes out because it's great to see a Scotie Cousin piece out there in the wild when you're driving by. And we should say, you're at the airport now, and there are displays both in the Haskell Gallery and leading up to the airport. So you really should keep your eyes peeled.
Not in the Haskell Gallery anymore. That show's over with.
Okay.
But in the whole, their whole grounds, I'm composing all the time and putting something, and they just love it. I just think it's great.
Well, it's great to meet the man behind the artwork, Scotie Cousin, Jocelyn Tolbert. Thanks so much for being here.
It was
Appreciate
awesome.
Thank you very much.
All right, and thank you for listening. If you have feedback or suggestions, you can send either to First Coast Connect at WJCT.org. And if you missed anything today, you can catch our rebroadcast at 8 o'clock tonight, or you can find our entire archive on your favorite podcast platform and at WJCT.org. Don't forget to listen to What's Health Got to Do with It Saturday at 4 when neurologist Dr. Joe Servin discusses how to know when memory lapses signal normal aging or something more serious. Join us Monday when we discuss mangroves on the march and what it tells us about our warming planet. I'm Ann Schindler. You've been listening to First Coast Connect on WJCT News 89.9.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or BaptistJax.com. The North Florida TPO is dedicated to transportation planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, resilient, and connected region. More information available at northfloridatpo.com.
Bridging the gap between psychiatric and neurologic care. I'm Dr. Joe Servin. Join me tomorrow at 4 for What's Health Got to Do with It, only in WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville.